Well, friends, welcome back. I'm very happy to have back on the line the Wealth Watchman as we prepare for another week of the banksters' schemes and machinations. I thought it would be great to touch base with the Wealth Watchman about the global gold supply and the global gold picture, and of course the silver supply and silver picture. Wealth Watchman, welcome back.
Thank you, Sean. Always great to be here. Thank you, sir.
Well, glad to have you. You've become one of our favorites here. We helped break you onto the scene over at SGT Report, and now your articles are being read and spread far and wide. And I wanted to circle back to your article from April 29th, The Banking Dragon's Latest Scheme to Get Its Claws on Fresh Gold. And the reason I want to do that, Wealth Watchman, is because we have to keep an eye on the gold Ponzi scheme, because those of us who know the truth know that it's a scheme that's falling apart. There's fissures in the scheme at the base of the pyramid. There's fissures worldwide because nation states are recognizing what's going on here. I just want to read for folks a little bit from that piece. And you wrote, as the manufactured decline in precious metals drags on, the banking powers have bled a severe, epic tonnage of gold. We're talking thousands of tons of gold in just a few short years. And you say because of that, they've had to get more creative in coming up with ways to get their hands on new gold to shuttle into their dying international rehypothecated gold Ponzi scheme. And one of the ways that they're doing that is actually pretty shocking that a leader of a country would even participate. President Maduro of Venezuela is on the fast track to third world status, you write, by giving his gold reserves, $1 billion of Venezuela's gold reserves, physical gold, to these banksters. And I think to add insult to injury to the people of Venezuela, Wealth Watchman, the banksters are charging him 6 or 7% just for the luxury of turning his gold into fiat. Do you want to talk about that, or should we talk about the global gold picture in general?
Well, sure. I think that talking about that is it joined hand in hand with the global gold picture. Now, we have to remember that the banking dragon in the city of London was loath to give up their gold to Chavez several years ago. They didn't really have much of a choice because he went very public with his demands. And so if they were to refuse him publicly, it would cause a greater run on what little gold is left than if they had tried to supply him with some of what he was requesting. So they did repatriate some gold to him. It was very public. And you'll remember after he did that, the global trend, the craze, in all these nations cropping up was to do the same. All they wanted was for someone to come out first, to be the bold player first, to say, this is mine, this is ours, this belongs to our people, it is in the hands of criminals, and, we can be criminals just fine by ourselves. Thank you very much. We don't need, you to double dip and use our gold to play your silly little games. So they did return much of that gold to Venezuela, and since then, it has created, global demand for countries like the Netherlands, who requested their gold and got a large portion of it. Germany, who is still repatriating their gold. The newest figures from the New York Federal Reserve say that they're still, at least on paper, bleeding, roughly 10 tons per month. So either Germany is still also requesting their gold month by month to be paid back in installments, or another nation has jumped the shark and jumped the queue and is now asking for what is rightly theirs as well. But this trend was entirely started by Hugo Chavez himself. And Hugo Chavez, while not really a great guy, hated the banksters just as much as we do for different reasons. And he knew that he knew what he was doing when he requested it. It wasn't just about sovereignty. Okay, it was about hurting these people that he hated. Because he, like everyone else, knew the games they were playing. And because he was already dying of cancer, really felt he had nothing left to lose. I mean, when you're dying, you always, people when they're dying, they see life differently, and they set aside time to do all those quote unquote impossible things they never had a chance to do before. And that's kind of what he did. All right, he requested all this gold. It set off a chain reaction behind the scenes of panic. Well, if the Ponzi is going to be ended, we might as well jump to the head of the line. And so now we're seeing country after country after country do that. And with countries like China on the Shanghai Exchange, their demand in the first quarter, the first 4 months, it was basically like 760, 70 tons. I mean, annualized, that's about 2,500 tons, which is almost 100% of what the planet mines outside of Russia and China. So one nation is now sucking up all the gold that's available. This doesn't even, count India, which is also on pace to, import roughly 1,000 tons, and all the other nations that need gold. So where is that gold coming from? Okay, the gold is coming from the central banks. The gold is coming from the Bank of International Settlements. The gold is coming from the Bank of England. The gold is coming from the Federal Reserve. The gold is coming from bullion banks. And that is why they are so hard pressed to find new sources of gold from places like Latin America, where they pay bottom dollar on an already bottom dollar price for gold. To Maduro, who is doing this because his policies are so disastrous. He's wrecking his country, and therefore to keep the boat from sinking on his watch, on the heels of Chavez, he is even selling their earmarked gold and allowing them to play the games he knows that they're playing. They all know. So this is extremely interesting. We know they're getting to the bottom of the barrel. What was one of the first signs in the last 6 months that the bottom of the barrel is almost reached? To me, it was GOFO. Okay, they stopped quoting GOFO and the gold forward offered rate in London. And when I heard they were going to do that, the very first thing that cropped up in my mind is, well, they're going to take it lower. They're going to take gold lower because more and more people are paying attention to the quantities of gold available for sale, wholesale gold bars available for sale at these stupid prices. And if they're going to stop GOFO, it means they can no longer supply those bars at these fantasy prices for these rates. And they don't want people to know just how dire the shortage is becoming. And so that is something that bears watching going forward. The world is demanding more gold than ever, and it doesn't matter how many Latin American countries, they snooker into giving away their sovereign treasure. It's still going to fail and fail in a spectacular fashion.
This entire story reminds me of what the IMF is doing to Greece, because the point here is that it makes you wonder if Maduro is just a puppet of the banksters, but in fact, he himself has accused Joe Biden of a bloody coup in Venezuela. I don't think he's any fan of this administration in the United States. I think he is in a desperate situation, as are his people, but the point here is that you cannot make a deal with the devil. You cannot invite the vampire into your home.
That's right.
And that's what he's done here. As you note in your report here, international firms have calculated that in 2015 alone, the Venezuelan government's fiscal deficit could reach $25 billion. To make a deal with the devil to get $1 billion from these banks at 6 or 7% is not going to save Venezuela. Just as we segue over to the story of Greece, making a deal with the IMF, they know it, you know it, I know it. It won't save them from their fiscal despair. What do you see happening right now in the EU and in Greece specifically?
Well, that's a good question. You'll remember in our last interview several months ago, everyone was like, well, Greece is fixed. And I said, that is the height of nonsense. Nothing in Greece is fixed. And that's exactly what we've seen happen. Every time they say, oh, we have a deal, 24 hours later after they use that announcement to buoy stocks again and keep them from falling through the center of the earth, they say, well, you know what, we spoke out of turn. Things are actually not better, they're kind of worse. But, better, worse, the same thing, right? I mean, the spin is getting so epic because behind the scenes, the turmoil in the markets are just getting disastrous. So right now we have some very interesting things happening in Greece, all right, because we know they don't just have to turn to the IMF. There are now other options. Okay, they can turn, to the east, to some of these banking institutions in the east. The AIIB will soon be online. They'll soon have their BRICS development bank online, and Russia has even come, and China both. They have gone to Cyprus, okay? They have gone to Syriza, and they have talked about long-term joint ventures and partnerships and energy, military contracts. I mean, Greece is even looking to buy S-300 missiles, one of the most advanced missile systems that exists, from Russia, and they're offering potential islands to put Russian military bases in. And Cyprus is doing the same thing. I mean, Cyprus was manhandled as well by these EU crooks. I mean, they were bailed in overnight. The common man, was suddenly told there's no cash. It's all gone, and you have the privilege now of standing in line for 8 hours a day because you certainly have nothing else to do with your lives, right? You can stand in line for 8 hours a day, and we'll maybe if we're feeling generous, give you, $100, $200 a day of currency. It doesn't matter if you had a couple billion. You're just like everybody else now. You're just a serf, and we are going to sink our claws into you and take every drop of blood that we can to save the system, of course. This prosperous EU system. That's such a success. It's such a success that we have to literally find a new sucker to steal the life savings of every single day. And they're trying that in Greece right now. And so far it has hit a brick wall. Now, I'm not saying that a deal sooner or later won't be reached. It might not be. But at this point, Greece, the people there, the government there, everyone realizes that they got a bum deal. Everyone realizes that the EU was not a utopia, it was a trap. It was a trap from the beginning. It was a trap to secure, all the corporations that were there, the agricultural sector that was there, all the railroads, everything. The oligarchs were out for a serial grab of the people of Greece's assets. They've gotten many of them, and the people are finally saying the scraps that are here may not be much, but they're our scraps, and you're not going to have them. We're going to keep them for ourselves. That was what was behind the populist vote of Syriza in the first place. And now we see that Putin has even the Kremlin has perhaps offered a multi-billion-dollar advance notice for this pipeline just to pay short-term IMF and pension bills. Now, I don't know if they will get the cash up front, but I do know that they are planning the Turk Stream, the Blue Stream pipeline, the gas pipeline under the Black Sea, through Turkey, and now through Greece. It's going to go through Greece. It's probably going to go through Macedonia and Serbia, all Orthodox lands. It's going to stay out of Catholic Europe as long as possible, and it will only breach Catholic Europe once it gets to, surprise, Hungary, the new, strategically valuable partner to Russia, whose leadership is extraordinarily pro-Russian. And guess where it's going to go then? It's going to go to Austria. Austria, whose leadership just in the last several days has announced that not only are they not in favor of more sanctions on Russia, they are for early normalization of relations with Russia. They're against new sanctions. They're against even, continuing the old sanctions because they know which side that their bread is going to be buttered on for the next several decades. They know what the EU has to offer. They know they're bankrupt morally and fiscally. They want something else. And they're willing to turn to Putin and the East to get it. And it will make sure that those people, those oligarchs, dreamed of cracking down on Russia and isolating them are bitterly disappointed for years to come.
I'm really glad you brought up Russia and Putin because I was going to bring it up next. I did an interview with James Corbett recently in which he made the point that China is central and critical to the Rockefeller and Rothschild New World Order plans. He mentioned the 8 eternal families in China and their relationship with Kissinger and that entire banking clan. It kind of took the wind out of my sails because so many of us look at China as a counterbalance to the aggression and corruption here in the West. Certainly China has its share of corruption too, Wealth Watchman. As you know, they have no respect for patents. They have no respect for human life with their one-child policy. China certainly is a problem of its own, but I was hoping, against hope, that when this economy collapses here and the banksters lose the dollar, it might spell curtains for them. James Corbett disagrees. So I asked James about Putin and Russia. Is the counterbalance we're seeing, is the resistance we're seeing from Putin and Russia genuine? And he didn't know. He said he needed to do more research about that and intends to in the very near future. So I want to ask you, as we see Newsweek on August 1st, 2014, come out with their magazine, and on the cover was Putin with nuclear explosions in his sunglasses, and the title of that one was The Pariah, Inside the Bulletproof Bubble of the West's Public Enemy Number One. We know what the propaganda is here. What is your take on Putin and Russia? Is this genuine, or is he just playing his role, his chess piece in this New World Order plan?
Sure. But, I respect Mr. Corbett. I mean, he does a fine job of watching the elites and watching the system and the breakdown. And I believe him to be a genuine man and a very helpful presence in the alternative media. Absolutely. In regards to Putin, I'll remind everybody, one of the first things that Putin did when he came into office was he kind of held a roundtable discussion with many of the oligarchs, especially the ones who mysteriously, in 5 or 10 years, came out of nowhere to suddenly dominate huge spaces of the gas and oil industries in his country. Okay, people like Mikhail Khodorkovsky. Okay, someone who just came out of nowhere and was, he took over a lot of the Siberian oil fields and consolidated them. I think it was into a company called Yukos. All right. So he brought these people together. And the first thing he did was call out Mikhail Khodorkovsky right on national television for tax evasion, for money laundering, for embezzlement, for fraud. And within like 3 hours, Khodorkovsky was arrested. His finances took a huge hit. Yukos took a huge hit, and they wanted to, quote unquote, privatize these oligarchs. Now, Khodorkovsky and some of these others, they were trying to, break into the large Leviathan, state, crypto state oil industries and gas industries, and they were trying to privatize them. Privatize them, in globalist terms, is a code word for let the banksters have it all. Okay, and let you have crumbs. That's what privatize means when they use the word. When Khodorkovsky uses the word, it means dispossession of Russia and the people of the Rus from the assets that sat on the land of their fathers' fathers' fathers. Okay, this man was arrested. And many of the others were arrested or had to flee the country. And I believe Mr. Chris Dwayne many years ago made a video about how when Putin went after these people, he called them out, he arrested them, and some of them, many of them were Zionists, many of them were Jews. Some of them actually sent their shares and their wealth back to Jacob Rothschild, for heaven's sakes, for crying out loud, to Jacob Rothschild in the city of London. Now, why would they do that? Okay, they did that because they were bought and known pawns the entire time, and Putin knew who they were, and Putin knew who he was dealing with. Okay, would that be the very first action of somebody who was in these people's pockets? If Putin was in these people's pockets and he didn't mean any of the things that he's saying, why is George Soros calling him the most dangerous man alive? Why is George Soros raising the alarm bell and sounding the call that NATO and all these other quote-unquote free, guardians of Western democracy should safeguard this new republic that we all know is a bought and paid for vassal state of Jennifer Nuland and all these, people at the highest levels of the federal government.
Yeah, Victoria Nuland.
I'm sorry, Victoria Nuland. Why would he say that? Why would he view Putin as such a threat? And why would they try to why would they be so angry about the people of Crimea voting to return to Russia if they were all on the same team? Okay, the first thing Putin did was go in and say, you can do what you want in Kiev. You can run that city into the ground. This is your doing. Okay, but this is the city of Russian naval glory going back 250 years in Sevastopol. You are not going to have it. Mm-hmm. And we are going to come in here and we were going to safeguard a vote, and the vote was nearly unanimous. I mean, the vote was, 90-something%, and 3/4 of the population were involved in it. So he went in and took the military assets first, and then Putin stuck S-300 and 400 missile systems in the border, and that is why when the U.S. ships came within range of those missile systems, they suddenly discovered they were in range of nuclear missiles, and they turned tail and ran like hell back out of the Black Sea. That is what happened several years ago. If this man is truly just another one of theirs, nothing he is done would have been the things that he would have opted for. Okay, I mean, he refuses to return Snowden. He stopped the war in Syria. I mean, he's done everything he can to create a stronger Russian state. And he's done that so that the stronger Russian state can withstand the attacks of the West. And he's done it through something called national champions. He wrote a paper on this. Putin wrote a paper on national champions. National champions is something he said was a matter of state and national security. And basically, that's a doctrine that says large corporations, energy corporations like Gazprom, like Rosneft, these corporations should be part government owned and part a private owned by Russians. That way, you can ensure that they use their funds, their resources, and their power to safeguard the Russian political and financial system. Because he knew that when the bankers get in there, when they take over their crown jewel assets, Russia doesn't stand a chance. And he stopped that at the very outset, and he's still stopping that today with every play that he makes in the natural gas world, especially in Europe.
Well, what an interesting perspective. That's why we get the Wealth Watchman on as often as we do, guys, and we'll continue to do that over time because this is very important analysis. And as I've often said, it takes all of us working together to keep an eye on all of the problems and all of the different vector points from which the banksters are attacking humanity. So good conversation there about Putin, and I certainly hope you're right. And I do think that the evidence you've provided there does prove that to at least some degree you're right, because if this man is just playing along in a bigger chess game and he's just playing his role, he's doing an awfully good job of doing it completely opposite of the way that people like Cameron and Obama are playing their roles. Let's talk about the world global silver supply and the war for silver that's going on right now. You've written about J.P. Morgan accumulating silver. Ted Butler notes as much as, 300 million ounces of physical being hoarded by J.P. Morgan. Let's talk about the latest. What do you see happening in the global war for physical silver, Wealth Watchman?
Well, in the last couple of years, we have seen an actual, on the mining side, an increase, a sizable increase over several years in mining supply. Now, this isn't because the miners are rolling in the dough. Okay, I think Steve Sanangelo did an excellent job recently of showing how most of the primary miners in the silver market have lost a tremendous, monumental sum of money. I think in 2014, the top 6 or 12 primary silver mining companies lost a grand total of $2 billion. Okay, and these people who say, well, silver just costs $6, $7, maybe $8 to pull out of the ground. Yeah, these people know nothing about anything they're talking about. They have absolutely no idea what's going on, and they have absolutely no idea why it's almost a nuclear winter right now in the mining industry. No one wants to be there because everyone's looking at the losses, the year-on-year losses in precious metals, and know that those losses are going to be amplified by orders of magnitude in the leveraged mining system. And those mines are holding to the same banks rigging the market, rigging the metals, are just waiting to pick up these bankrupt mines for literal pennies on the dollar. So, you know that they're only staying alive by high grading. And that just is a technical term, which means that they are choosing to bring up the least expensive silver, their best reserves in the ground. And they're hoping and praying to God that if they mine epic record amounts of silver, that they can stay afloat and alive long enough to outlast this 4-year downtrend in silver. Okay, so that's the reason why we've seen marginal upticks. But lo and behold, today, the Wall Street Journal has an article saying they expect silver's production to peak in 2015. It may even be lower than 2014. We might have peaked last year. And they're saying that, that countries like India, which I have written about extensively, are taking a larger and larger share of the little bit of silver that's out there. J.P. Morgan knows all of this because J.P. Morgan is culprit number one. They are the chief rigger, they are the chief criminal, and they are the chief monster with their hand in the cookie jar. I mean, the cookie jar, they're the only thing in the cookie jar. Them and a little bit of silver that they're playing with. Now, Ted Butler and others thinks that he has a theorem. I can't verify it. I don't think anyone can. But he says that not only are they acquiring silver on the COMEX, which is at the highest levels ever and only started the moment silver was murdered in May 4 years ago. They started accumulating silver then, and they have never stopped. And not only are they doing it there, they are doing it on the SLV. No one remembers this. But I do. I mean, Ted Butler does, but I haven't seen anyone else mention it. 4 years ago, when silver was smacked in May, 60 million ounces of silver that was registered in the SLV disappeared in 2 weeks. Okay, it was annihilated. Literally 20% of SLV stockpiles just, vanished. It was like magic, and I promise you, that silver did not go to Narnia. That silver did not go to Wonderland. That silver did not go to any, imaginary world. It went somewhere. It went straight into vaults and coffers of some very connected insider people who are running the show. And Ted thinks that that a large part of that 60 million ounces could have probably just gone straight into J.P. Morgan's private coffers off the books. And he thinks that they're the ones who keep tendering shares, cashing out, taking the metal, a million ounces, 2 million ounces at a time every week or so, and that they're the ones doing it so that they can avoid the reporting requirements, so that they won't be fingered as the bad guy in SLV, the actual custodian of the entire fraudulent scheme. And Ted thinks that they could have even been buying government minted coins. Now, that's completely unverifiable at this point, but he strongly believes that one of the reasons that silver sales are epic, record in government mints, 44 million ounces last year, from the U.S. Mint. And this year, this is brand new information. I just found it out this morning. The numbers from the Canadian Mint for last year have been released, and it was epic. I mean, they sold 29.2 million ounces of silver maples, which broke the old record by 1 million ounces. So you have nearly 75 million ounces just from 2 coins in 1 year, which is nearly 10% of supply, just going to these buyers of bullion. And he thinks that JP Morgan is part of it. Now, I mean, why is JP Morgan doing this? I mean, I can't give you all the reasons, but one thing I know for certain is that silver is not unimportant. Silver is not, a small detail. Silver is the key to their system, and they have to control it, and they have to rig it to the very end, or they have no system. And so at this point, JP Morgan is in a scramble, hoping, praying, begging you not to buy an ounce so they can have more, so that, they can either score big on the next silver spike, or they can have it to make perhaps another descent from a higher level. Say if silver spikes to, I'm not saying that happen anytime, tomorrow or the next week, but when silver's next spike does happen, that I guarantee you they would rather cap it at $100 or $150 instead of multiples of that. And the way that they're going to do that is to have, several 100 million ounces of silver to feed into the insatiable demand that will happen when silver gets on that kind of runway and takes off. So there is a war. There is a bidding war, and J.P. Morgan is taking its share. Industry is taking its share. India is taking your share. I hope you are. I just bought some more the other day. I'm going to keep buying, and it's a fight. It is a literal war that we are in, not just for silver, but for everything. But silver is a key part of that war, and they know it, and that's why they're fighting it.
Yeah, and for anybody who questions anything that was just said there, I advise you to read Charles Savoy's The Silver Squelchers. It's his ongoing series and documentation of the multi-decade and, in fact, multi-century scheme to suppress silver, to hoard silver, to demonetize silver, and to make sure that it stays demonetized. It's very, very important work. Charles Savoy's The Silver Squelchers. He continues to work on that series, and he has communicated with me personally. We're going to do an interview at some point in the future, and Charles says that it is the most exhausting work he's ever done, and it really takes all his time, aside from the things he must do, like eat and sleep and spend a little bit of time with his family. Charles Savoy's The Silver Squelchers, very, very critical work as we document the collapse that is being caused by these monsters we call banksters. Before I let you go, Wealth Watchman, I want to talk about the potential for social unrest when the system goes down. We see Jade Helm 15 about ready to roll out this summer for 2 months. We see Deagle.com suggests that by 2025, the population of the United States could plummet to like 70 million people. They cite reasons like de-dollarization, economic collapse, famine, drought. They cite all of these reasons to get us to that population reduction. They also say that people would migrate out of this nation. What do you see as potential triggers at this point for social unrest? And I guess the secondary question to that is, when is this economic collapse going to happen, or is it already happening?
Well, sure. I mean, it's been happening for years. It's been happening, for the last, 10 years when the first recession started, even before September 11th, 2001. But it's a slow motion collapse, but it's kicked into a higher gear since the financial collapse of 2008.
Right.
All right, and they're levitating it through tens of trillions of dollars
Right.
of backroom bailouts, of central banks stepping into equity markets, stepping into bond markets, stepping into forex markets every single day and rigging every single thing. And that is the only reason why we're even having this conversation in a normal way.
Mm-hmm.
What could have happened 7 years ago in the last collapse? It could have been far more catastrophic than it was, and it only wasn't that catastrophic because of the market rigging. Now, maybe I'm a little selfish, but sometimes, even though I want it to end, I say, well, maybe I don't want it to end today. I'd like to go out for ice cream later.
Yeah. No, really. No, it's true. I've said that when the collapse comes, it's going to be far worse. Think Cormac McCarthy's The Road. I mean, if you want to see what apocalypse looks like, it's not pleasant. So we really ought to be careful about what we wish for. But to your point, they used up all of their cards. They used up all of their outs after the last collapse. They've spent trillions keeping this thing propped up. So when it finally does collapse, I don't know that they have any cards left to play.
Right. Yeah. Some people say, well, the East has, been shielding itself from this inevitability by setting up their alternate system, which is being fast tracked as we speak. Is being fast tracked for whatever reason. They're not going to be as vulnerable because of the actual assets they own, free and clear of our debt system. But speaking to your point, what could set the masses off? Anything. Absolutely anything. I mean, people looking around, people are hurting, people are angry, people are snapping, and they're snapping over, sometimes big things, sometimes little things. I remember, and I wrote about it, a couple years ago in my hometown, the EBT SNAP card system had a glitch. I don't know if it was a trial balloon or what, but it had a glitch, and for about 2 hours, the EBT cards did not work, and it took less than an hour for the locals to start walking into the local Walmart and just walking out with carts full of stuff that they refused to pay for. They kept saying, "Well, this is mine. I was promised this. I'm owed this. They owe us this." They never say who they is. But they think the world owes them. We have an entitlement system, and it's been entitlement for so long. There is going to be feelings of betrayal. There's going to be feelings of despair and despondency and hopelessness.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing keeping everything together is a food stamp system, etc., of 50 million people. Basically, the population of a large European country
Mm-hmm.
is all on food stamps in the United States. A system that J.P. Morgan also runs, by the way, and makes a pretty penny off of while they're doing it.
Right.
Uh, these so safety nets, unquote, are the only things that are keeping people from absolutely losing their minds. But people are starting to lose their minds anyway. I mean, you look at Ferguson, you look at Baltimore. I mean, things can spiral very, very quickly, and especially in an age where you can send out a tweet, instantly to 2 million people, and cause some kind of Mariah. I mean, just anything can happen. And this is not the time to tell everybody what assets you own. This is not a time to tell complete strangers who you are, what you own, and hey, you should buy gold and silver. I'm doing that. No, you shouldn't do that at all. You should be laying low. You should be telling your closest friends and family maybe about some things they can do to shield themselves, but you should not be wearing your wealth on your sleeve, and you should not be going out and just saying how well you're doing. For heaven's sakes, when it all goes, you are going to be, target numero uno. And the people going out there buying $100 million homes and saying, yeah, this is valuable, not because it's going to bring us cash, but because we can brag about it. These people are absolutely living on the planet Jupiter. They have absolutely no idea what is happening or going to happen. So I suggest you not be one of those targets. I mean, we need to remember when revolutions really get out of hand, when mobs get out of hand, and they have, mob justice, which is an oxymoron. There's no justice in a mob. But, what happened in France? I mean, heads were literally rolling. I mean, you don't want to be anywhere yet visible when that happens. You want to do what you can to safeguard yourselves and your families and friends, but you do not want to be a public face, a public head, a public figure, speaker, and just tell everybody what you're doing. You got to play a lot of cards to the vest, and you've got to be street savvy. You've got to know where we're at, and that's where we're at. That's where we're headed. So I think the event, whatever that is, will come. The spark will come and ignite that 1,000 tons of dynamite. Just don't be anywhere near it when it goes off.
Guys, as George Orwell in 1984 said, If you want to see the future of humanity, imagine a boot stomping on a human face forever. It seems with things like the TPP, the secretive trade deal being negotiated by Obama, behind the scenes, being written by corporations for the benefit of corporations, is just another example of what we're up against. As we say, the banksters are waging war on humanity. It's the banksters and the corporations they own. As a final note, I would just suggest that everybody get on the phone, no matter how hopeless you think it is to deal with politicians, and leave a message, send an email to your Congress critter and to your senators telling them if they even think about backing the TPP, you will make sure that they never sit in a public office again. It will spell the end of what's left of our fragile economy. And
That's
our
right.
guest has been the Wealth Watchman, a good friend to SGT Report, and a guy with a beautiful website. Can you tell folks about your website?
Sure, absolutely. My work can be found at thewealthwatchman.com. It's a labor of love. I built it with friends, and I tried to make it something different. I tried to make it something unique. It is our job to keep an eye on the things that matter, because they're not going to get those things in the mainstream media. They're not going to get those things probably from their friends or family. They have to grasp for truth wherever they can find it. And hopefully, we are bringing the meaningful truths to them, and allowing them to have a ghost of a chance to lay claim on a future worth having, a future worth living. It is a war. I've talked about that. Just not just an information war. I mean, life is a battle. Everyone's going to get hit, and life's going to hit you hard. But it's about how many times you can take the hits and keep getting back up. You can keep fighting. You keep getting in their face, and you keep trying to lay claim to what's yours. You keep trying to lay claim for a better tomorrow, and you keep fighting for what's right. And you don't let anyone stop you. These banks are trying to stop us. They're trying to stop us with a disinformation war. They're trying to stop us with endless market rigging. They've been hitting over and over and over again. But we are still here. We keep getting back up. We're going to be here, God willing, when the bell rings, and we're going to be looking them in the eye, and we're going to win if we but stay faithful to what we've been doing, to the vision of what is right and true. We do it to the very last.
Yeah, spoken like a true libertarian and a patriot, spoken like somebody with heart and soul. A great guy and a good friend to SGT Report, the Wealth Watchman from wealthwatchman.com. Guys, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for your support at SGT Report, thelibertymill.com, and thephaser.com. Real news, truthful news, the antidote to corporate propaganda 24/7. Have a terrific week ahead. God bless.